This lesson is about maps. It's very, very basic. It's not going to go into anything too complex. This is basically just vocabulary regarding maps and just a little bit of an activity, perhaps. So, for the warm up for this lesson, I have the questions: what do maps show? When and why would someone use a map? And give an example of a time when you used a map. Now, number 3 is helpful for me as a teacher because a lot of my kids who are in ninth grade, they say, Miss, I've never used a map, so what do you want me to write for number 3? And that's very telling to me because what that shows me is that their definition and their idea of what a map is very defined. It's very rigid. Okay, what they think is a map is a piece of paper that you use. Sure, that's what it can be, but in 2016, that's not what you see as often. So they don't see that Google Maps, even though the maps is in the word, they don't really view that as using a map, or they don't see using GPS as using a map. So this allows me to gain insight into what they're thinking and also for me to expand that idea and kind of think outside the box. So, like I just told you, a lot of my kids think that maps are paper and it's something that you hold and something that you use, but they've never used one. So, what I did was I have these printed out. It's a theme park map with roller coasters and all this different kind of stuff. So, I had them look at it, and then I've also created a worksheet that goes along with this. And so they are examining what the different parts of the map are. They're using the legend. They're using all the different pieces of this and creating like their own plans of how they're going to get from one point to another and those kinds of things. So they're actually using a paper map. So yes, that is what their restricted definition is of a map, but then using it so that they have this experience because they've never had it before, and then we move on to something else. So in their notebooks, I had them write down this vocabulary: cartographer, sketch map, globe, and maps. Again, they're in ninth grade. These are very simple words. However, whenever I have a word that has multiple different parts in it, I like to break it down to show them that you can figure out what words mean even if you've never seen the word before. If it is a word that has like a Greek or Latin base, typically. So, on like the first day, we talked about geography, and I wrote it on the board, and I underlined geo, and I underlined graphy. And so we discussed what we think those two parts mean. And we got to the conclusion that geo meant earth and that graphy means the study of. So when I have this word, I put it up on the whiteboard, cartographer. And I also put on geography, geographer, cartographer, and cartography. So then we see, okay, geo means earth, graphy means the study of. So then you have the study of the earth. Cartography, carto means something, but we already know that graphy means the study of. And by this definition, which is up on the projection, we can guess that carto means maps. So then using the pieces of the word to figure out what the full word means, which seems to be very, very helpful for them to remember what these words are. Okay, so we have the 4 essential parts of a map. So what does essential mean? It means like very important. It needs to be there. So you have a title, you have the compass rose, and you have the scale, and you have a key or a legend. The key is the same thing as a legend. There's no difference. It's just 2 different words, but it means the same thing. Now, when my students say compass instead of compass rose, that's a problem. So what I do is when I tell them about compass rose, before I explain what that is, I take out a compass, a real one, and I have it in my hand and I walk around the room, showing all the kids that it moves. Then we discuss what a compass does versus a compass rose. And I explain that a compass rose is on a piece of paper and it shows you which direction is north. But regardless of which direction I am standing in and looking at the map, it will not change. However, if I have a compass in my hand, it'll change depending on which way I'm facing. So a compass moves, a compass rose does not, because a compass rose is just like a drawing. So I sprinkle formative assessment throughout what I do. So, is this a compass rose, a scale, a title, or a legend? Now, the reason why title is important is because you need to know what you're looking at. Now, I asked my kids, I'm like, if I gave you a map of Texas without the title, would you know what it is? And they all say, yeah. Now I told them, well, if I go over to Cambodia, and they're like, where's Cambodia? I'm like, well, if I go over to Asia somewhere and I give somebody a map of Texas without the title, do you think they would recognize what it is? And they're like, no, it probably wouldn't do that. So I'm like, okay, so a title is telling us what we're looking at. We don't necessarily know what it is. We might be able to guess, but we don't necessarily know. So, is this a compass rose, a scale, a title, or a key, or / legend? And this is a key. Now, throughout this PowerPoint, I have lots of different maps, different types of maps, to show that maps are not restricted to one thing. This map is titled The Campaign of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, June 3rd through July 1st, 1863. That is the entire title. Now, I point that out because you think that a title would just say Texas or Houston, something very simple, but it can be very long, depending on a lot of different things. Okay, but this is also showing us movement, which is very interesting, and it's also showing us history, historical movement. So again, practicing using different types of maps. Here's another use of a legend. I tell the kids, I'm like, this is a bad legend, but it's hard to show so many different teams and not have a hard time with the legend. But I tell the kids they should have used stripes or some kind of patterns as opposed to colors that are so similar. I mean, if you look at all the different shades of red, you're going to have a hard time figuring out what this map is actually saying. Okay, so the arrow is pointed to a key or a legend here. Now, yet again, we have a map that is showing us something completely different from all the other ones that we've seen so far. This one is showing us religion and where it is in the world. So is this a compass rose, a scale, a title, or a key / legend? This is actually a trick question because when I originally made it, I meant it to be scale. But then when I was teaching this in class, I was like, wait a second, there's actually a compass rose in there too. This compass rose, the arrow with the N in it, that is a compass rose, okay? You may not think so because it doesn't have a south or an east or a west, but it is. Because if we know where north is, we can figure out where the rest of it is. We can tell where north is, where south is, where east is, and where west is based on one direction, not the band. Now, if we look at this, we see a scale as well, and we also see a key. Now, this key has an airplane symbol for the O'Hare Airport. Now, I explained to the kids, personally, I think the main reason why keys are very useful is a stylistic choice. I explained to my students that maps are basically a work of art. They have the potential to be a work of art, at least. So instead of cluttering your whole map with words, if you can just put a clean, sleek picture on there instead of writing it out all the time, then it makes it much nicer to look at. Now, to go back to this, if we look at scale, This is the example that I use for all my kids. I'm like, okay, let's say I'm visiting Paris. And since I'm visiting, I do not have a car. I flew over there. Let's say that I'm a big fan of Marie Antoinette and I would love to see her palace or wherever she was living. I know she has some kind of house in Versailles. So, would I be able to walk from Paris to Versailles on the southwest side of Paris? And I have some kids who say yes, and I have some kids who say no. The kids who say no are paying attention to the scale. And I tell the kids, I don't like to walk 10 miles any day, but especially not when I'm on vacation. So I'm going to see if there's like a train that goes out there, or maybe just get an Uber or something. I don't know. I don't really know how long it takes you to get 10 miles outside of Paris, but they need to pay attention to the scale because it could look like it's pretty close together. But if you look at the scale, it may not be. So, is this a compass rose, a scale, a title, or a legend? This compass rose does not look like the other compass roses that we've seen so far. It is far more complex and it's not easy to see which way is north, but I mean, obviously we can guess. But if we go back and we compare it with the other compass roses on these other maps, you can see that they're all different styles. And some of them don't have the compass rose at all. So here's another one. Very simple, not too complex. So, cardinal directions are the 4 major directions: north, south, east, and west. Now, the intermediate directions are northwest, northeast, southwest, and southeast. In Texas, at least in East Texas, kids go from elementary school to intermediate school to middle school and then high school. Intermediate is 5th and 6th grade. So I asked them how many of you have been to intermediate school and if they've been here, they've been in the district and they've been to an intermediate school. So then I ask what grades intermediate is, and they tell me 5th and 6th, and I'm like, okay, so it's kind of in between elementary and middle school, right? They're like, yeah. So then I'm like, okay, intermediate's in between. So these are the directions that are in between the major ones: north, south, east, and west. So northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast. So if you look at the compass rose here, you see the cardinal directions, which are the major ones, and then you see the ones who are in between, like northeast. Now, the kids always ask, well, if there's ones that are in between the cardinals, are there ones that are in between the intermediate and the cardinals? Great question. Yes. I tell the kids, you don't need to know this, but yes, there are. And they're called half winds. So this is a 16-point compass rose, okay? Because north, south, east, and west, those are the cardinal, so that's 4. Northwest, northeast, southeast, southwest, those are the intermediates, so that's 4 more. And then you have the points that are in between each of those, which adds 8 more. So those would be half winds. I asked the kids, okay, why do you think they're called winds? Who would be using directions like this 500 years ago? And it would be ships, right? Sailors and explorers. And how do they power their ships? Well, the wind, okay? So, pretty simple. Now they ask, okay, well, is there more in between that? Yes, there are. And it gets very, very complex. It's essentially infinite. And also in the middle of this picture is a flower. So you can see a compass rose. So we have the cardinal directions, the basic directions. Then we have the intermediate directions, which are squished like that cat. What is missing from this map? And I believe it's the compass rose. I'm looking myself. I don't see a compass rose. I do see a title, a scale, and a legend, but I do not see a compass rose. Maybe I'm just missing it. So when we get to this question, I like to ask, of course, what is missing? But I also like to ask, what is the title? Because a lot of the kids think the title is too long to be the title. But the entire title is Total Persons 5 years and over who speak a language other than English at the home and speak English less than very well. That is super long, and it feels like it should be more than one sentence because it's so long, but it's actually the title. That is a perfectly fine title. Now, this is also a trick question. There is a title, there is the legend, there is a scale, and there is a compass rose. So then they're asking, well, why did you give us this question? And it's like, because I want you to see all the pieces of it. So that's a trick question. There's this video. I'll put the link in the description or make it clickable from this video. Really awesome. One of the last globe makers in the world are in England, obviously, because where else would a globe maker live but England? And it's really, really cool. They get to see how complex it is. Now, which is more accurate, a globe or a flat map, and why? It gets kind of complex. So my next question is it possible to make a ball lie completely flat, revealing all of its size at the same time? Think about it. If you have a flat, let's say kickball or basketball, just say basketball. Let's say that all the air has gone out of the basketball. Is it possible to put that flat basketball completely flat on the table? And it's not, right? And then if we make some cuts to it, is it possible to make it flat? Not. It's still going to be hard. I mean, if you can cut it all the way in half, and then you're going to have two halves that do not want to be flat. And then you can make a couple more cuts and still doesn't want to be flat. You can make a lot of cuts into that basketball and it will not be flat. Now we also need to talk about distortion. If I draw on a balloon a stick figure and it's not blown up, the balloon is flat. I draw a picture of the stick figure on it and I pull him. I pull his head and I pull on the other side his feet and then I stretch it and he becomes super skinny and tall. But if I take one hand and his other hand and I pull it apart, pull his hands apart, then he becomes kind of fat and wide. The same thing happens when you're talking about making the globe, which is not a two-dimensional or one-dimensional object. When you're trying to make that flat, you're going to have distortion, just like if I pulled that balloon apart, whether it's his head to his feet or his hands apart. There's going to be distortion. So it is basically impossible to accurately show what the Earth looks like on a flat piece of paper because the Earth is not flat. If I try to put flat paper and cover the globe, I'm going to have a really hard time with that. The paper will not want to be flat, and I can make cuts in that, and I can try to stick it on the globe, but it's not going to work. So the same reason why I can't make the flat piece of paper round, I cannot make the round globe flat. So there's lots of different types of maps, and none of them are particularly accurate. Some are more accurate than others, but the typical map that you're going to see from day to day, that's not really accurate. And this list, again, I'll put it in the description. You see a lot of different things. Actually, let's just go ahead and click on it, because there's two maps in particular that I find particularly interesting. Okay, let me zoom in here. Okay, let's look at this one. And okay, let's look at these two maps. Okay, so the Gall-Peters map from 1855 from James Gall and Arno Peters. Look at Africa. Now, here's the thing. People know what the shapes are of of the continents. We know where the coast is. We know all this different stuff because we can see from space. That's not the issue. The issue is, how do we make it so that it's not distorted? It's not that balloon that I've pulled apart. How can I make it true to its shape and to its size, mostly to its size? Now, if we look at Africa on this map looks basically bigger than every other continent, like really big. And it also looks long. Now, if we go to this one, the central cylindrical map from who knows, in 1850 approximately, we see Africa looks very different. Look at this, and then look at the long Africa. Those are two different things. And also look at Antarctica. Antarctica looks gigantic. What is that about? And you look up here, skinny. You look up here, you look over here, and two different stories. And look at Canada and Alaska. Jeez, Alaska looks bigger than all of the United States downstairs, okay? And the lower 48, it looks way bigger, Alaska. But up here, Alaska looks real skinny. So my point is, Earth is a sphere, right? And you cannot make that flat. Now, some maps do that better than others. Some maps have less distortion. For instance, the good homolizine map, I guess, pseudo-cylindrical. And basically, so if you like take this, if this was a piece of paper and you cut out the white, and you just have this area, okay? And you put glue here and glue over here, and then you put those parts together and you glue them together, and you glue here and then fold them together, you're going to make more of a circle. It's not going to be a sphere, but it's going to be more of a sphere than like one of these guys up here. So I know that seems like it's kind of hard to explain, but just understand, if you have a basketball and it has no air in it, you cannot make that flat on a table. It just will not happen. Same thing when you're talking about the globe. It's not going to be flat. And therefore, every map that you have that's flat of the Earth, of the entire Earth, it's going to be wrong in some spots. Now let's go into the different types of maps. There's two major types of maps. One is political, one is physical. Now, I also include thematic because I use that so often in my class. There's political and there's physical maps. Let's look at both of them. This is a political map. Political maps show boundaries that humans have made. Now, what confuses some people are things like, for instance, the Rio Grande. We use that as the southern border of Texas, as well as the southern border of the United States. This is not the Rio Grande, but if we look just here at the southern part of the Rio Grande, from El Paso going down, this is the border with Mexico. Now, nature made that. Nature made the Rio Grande. However, humans decided that that would be the dividing line between our two countries. The United States said, okay. Mexico said, okay. And now we have the Rio Grande as our border. Anytime you have a boundary line, that is a political map. Anytime you have a city, a county, whatever, those are going to be political maps. If it's showing us mountains, that's not a political map. If it's showing us certain peninsulas, not a political map. Political maps show us stuff that humans made up. So this was of states and of cities and rivers. Okay, that's kind of an odd thing. But if we look at this one, we see our title is World Political Map. So it's showing us countries. Again, if we look at the size of Alaska, it's like, you see this is a weird map. You see over here you have Alaska, and over here is Alaska. So it's kind of an odd thing. But this is a political map. It is showing us countries. It's not showing us mountains. It's not showing us, again, peninsulas. It's just showing us where countries start and begin, or start and end. Another political map. These are places that humans decided would be. None of these existed before humans. Egypt did not exist before humans. Did the land exist? Yep. But did the boundaries or the borders? No. This is a physical map. You see here Great Basin, Pacific Slope, Rocky Mountain Plateau, the Great Plains, Mississippi Valley, the Gulf Plain, Atlantic. Wait, what? Gulf Plain. Oh, the Gulf Plain and the Atlantic Plain, the Appalachian Highlands, the Great Lakes, the Gulf of Mexico, the Atlantic Ocean, and the Pacific Ocean. These are showing us physical features. All of this existed before humans did. All of it. And once we're gone, it'll still be there. That is what makes a physical map a physical map. Did this exist before humans? If so, then it's a physical map. Here we have a map that's titled Europe's Physical Geography. And we see that, yes, on some areas they have country names, and on some areas they have continent names. But we see in the Europe section, Northern European Plain, Carpathian Mountains, the Balkan Mountains, the Balkan Peninsula, the Italian Peninsula, the Apennines. We see these things that have existed before humans and that will still exist after humans are gone. It's showing what the surface of the earth looks like. So political maps show us how the earth looks, democracies and dictatorships, borders made by humans, or continents. And the answer is C, borders made by humans. Then there's a thematic map. It's any map with a theme. This theme could be, for instance, climate, movement, religion, something like that. Has an overall idea. So, does this map show us countries? No. Does this map show us peninsulas? Nope. Does it show us mountains? Nope. No. It shows us climate. Now, this does not have a title, which is a problem. But we can tell, if we know some of those words in the legend, we can tell what it's talking about. So this map is showing us things like where the deserts are, or where it's super, super, super cold. So cold that trees can't even live there. It's showing us a lot of different stuff, but it's showing us specific areas, and it has a theme, which is climate. This map also does not have a title. I noticed that now. But if we look at what the map is showing us, this is the spread of the Black Plague, or Black Death, or whatever you want to call it. So you see movement, and you see the spread of this disease. This is not showing you country names. It is showing you some city names, though. But it's not showing you country names. It's not showing you mountain ranges. It's not showing you plateaus or peninsulas. It's just showing you some cities, and it's showing you mostly, though, where this disease is spreading to and from. Our title for this map is The Religions of the World, and if we look at our legend, it shows us the religions and where people are located at. Our title here, percent of population 25 years and over who have completed high school in 2005, 2005. And then we see southern states not doing too hot. But you see in the key, there's different colors that represent different things. This is not showing, it is showing us boundary lines, but it's not labeling them. There's no cities in here. There's no mountains in here. Just showing us the percent of population 25 years and over who have completed high school. Our title here is Roller Coasters in the United States, and our legend is different. The different size of the circle represents how many approximately roller coasters they have. You can see that some states have 0 roller coasters and some have a lot of roller coasters. The title of this map, Africa Natural Resources. Now, at this point, I asked my kids, which is this? What kind of map is this? And since we just went over like 3 thematic maps, they're like, oh, it's a thematic map. And I'm like, yes, but it's also, you could say, political, because you see the not only the boundary lines, but they have also included labels of the countries. So, you could say that it's either one. I would have accepted either answer. So, physical maps show us countries, areas that would exist even without humans, demographics, or movement. Physical maps show us areas that would exist even without humans. Thematic maps show us countries of the world, or mountains and rivers, or information, or counties. And thematic maps show us information. So this is an activity that I have my kids do. Going back to the vocabulary, cartography, and also after we've learned about different types of maps and learned about the parts of the map, then they put that into practice. So it says, you are creating a map of a place you make up. Be inspired by a theme, a show, movie, game, whatever. But it's not a real place. You're making one up. Your map must include a title, a compass rose, a key or a legend, and a scale. And also one body of water. It could be a lake, pond, river, whatever. 5 roads with names and 5 buildings. So that's it. Very, very basic stuff. Nothing too complex. But I want to make sure that they're all on the same page. And I know that a lot of them either totally forgot about this stuff, or maybe they weren't taught it or something. But just making sure that they're all on the same page. And we cannot go into geography if we don't know how to use maps. We use maps every day in my class. So, and we also use maps every day in life. So let me know if you have any questions. I'll put those links in the description and allow you to do whatever with it. And thank you for watching. I hope that if you're a teacher, that maybe you got an idea, and if you're a kid, hopefully you learned something. Thank you.